legalization or drug criminalization or drug or incarceration is triggering for you, then this probably isn't the ASMR video for you, and I would not be offended at all if you had to pass, because it's just a triggering topic for a lot of people, and I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's important, but realize not everyone, has the privilege to be able to talk about it and feel not triggered. So I totally understand if that's you. If that's you, love you so much. I have other videos, other YouTubers have other videos. There's plenty of ASMR. You're loved, you're supported. Live your life. The last thing I wanted to say is that whether or not you agree with me that marijuana should be legalized completely, it is undeniable that marijuana laws in this country, in the United States, have had a disproportionately negative impact on black people and also Hispanic people and also poor people. So that's indisputable, and whether or not you agree with me, it doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter, but I just want you to know that marijuana laws and marijuana policy as is racist. So there's that. Okay, so I have 8 different reasons listed on my computer, that's right there, about why I think that marijuana should be completely legalized. And I'm going to read them to you. Please promise that before you disagree with me, or before you write in the comments that you don't agree, listen to all of my reasons why, what I believe, and then if you don't agree with something, feel free to put it in the comments, and I will read it and try to understand where you're coming from. I can't guarantee you that I'm gonna agree with what you're saying, but I promise I'll listen to what you have to say, and I ask that you do the same. If you do agree with me, then you can write in the comments supporting me, when inevitably there are some people coming for me. Number 1. Legalizing marijuana will get people out of prison and get people rid of their criminal records. And I have kind of a statistic here that I'm going to read that I think might be helpful to contextualize why I think this is so important. So at a federal level, 47.5% of prisoners, so a little over 80,000, were serving a sentence for at the end of September 2016 after being convicted of a drug offense as their most serious crime, which is a wild statistic. Wild statistic. Because to think that about half of the people in federal prison are there for a drug-related crime is truly unfathomable when you think about how so many drug-related crimes aren't even violent, and to have about half of the people in federal prison to be there for a drug-related crime as their highest crime. So it's not even like these people killed someone and were convicted for having drugs on them and then they're in prison now. No, these are people that are just were convicted for drug-related crimes. Not that I'm making an argument that anyone should be in prison, because I'm not, but what's even more wild is this particular statistic that is saying 50% of people in federal prison are there for drugs alone, which to me is legitimately horrifying. So, yeah, that's that. Number two. Number 2. The second reason why I am all for the complete legalization of marijuana is that marijuana has multiple different medical benefits, and that could be both physical and mental benefits. So, marijuana is used to treat anxiety and depression. It's also used to prevent seizures in some people, in some patients. It's also used to treat PTSD, which, if you don't know, that stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And it also can be used to manage stress or to improve sleeping. So that's a ton of benefits that are able to be derived from marijuana, which is relatively cheap. Yes, you could argue there are drugs that do all these other things, treating anxiety, preventing seizures, treating PTSD, but marijuana is likely the cheapest option for all those things and might be more effective for some people. So to think there are people living out there anxiety, depression, to treat their seizures because they don't have access to marijuana, and because marijuana is illegal, is really sad. Then you might say, okay, fine, Eric, marijuana should be legal medicinally, but not for recreational use. But my counter argument to that is that some people are unable to go to a doctor or go to a psychiatrist to get prescriptions, which limits a lot of people from access to marijuana if it's only legal for medical reasons. And if it needs to be prescribed by a doctor or a psychiatrist, then you then have to pay for a psychiatry appointment or a doctor's appointment to receive those medications, those marijuana medications. Also, as a lot of you probably already know, doctors and psychiatrists can be really racist, and so they're probably less likely to prescribe marijuana to people of color, just like they're less likely to prescribe lots of different medications like painkillers, antidepressants to people of color, either because they don't believe that people of color when they tell them their symptoms, or because they have some sort of racist idea that they're going to abuse these drugs. So because of the cost of going to doctors and psychiatrists, and because of internal biases of doctors and psychiatrists, I think that marijuana should just be legalized so that you don't need to see a doctor or a psychiatrist to obtain the drug. 5 is, number 4, decreased teen use. So I would argue that if marijuana was legalized, less teens would be using the drug for a few reasons. The first is that if it was legalized, we could regulate the age in which people use marijuana. So just like alcohol, you can't use it until you're 21. Maybe we say that you can't use marijuana until you're 21 as well. I think 18 is probably a better age. You know, I'm not a doctor, but that's probably what I would guess. But if marijuana was legalized, we would be able to decide as a country what that age should be to legally use marijuana. The second reason why I think that it would decrease teenage drug use or marijuana use is that when things are illegal, it makes us want to do those things more. At least when I was a teenager, I always kind of wanted to push the boundaries and do things that were not good or maybe even illegal because I was, I don't know, rebellious. And I think that if marijuana was legal, it would be seen as less rebellious to be doing marijuana, or even just less cool, and kids might have less interest. I know that for me, if something like when I turned to 21 and was able to drink alcohol, it was way less enticing for me to be drinking alcohol than before I was 20 and it was illegal for me to be drinking it. Even when I studied abroad when I was 20 years old, so I wasn't legally able to drink in the US and I was able to go to Ecuador and drink it legally, I was way less interested in drinking and going to bars because it was legal and it wasn't that cool for me to be doing. Number 5. The 5th reason that I believe that marijuana should be legalized in the United States of America is that if it was legalized, there would be a decreased need for drug trafficking and cartels to be used to bring marijuana into the country. If marijuana was legal and was able to be grown legally in the country, there would be no need for more dangerous and risky types of sales, trading, and importation of marijuana. So if it was legalized, then you could go to a dispensary to buy it rather than having to go and buy that weed from an illegal method that might be a little more dangerous. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later. This doesn't mean that I believe that all people who currently engage in marijuana business, the marijuana business, shouldn't then have access to continuing their business legally. I'm just saying that currently as it is, it might be dangerous for some people to engage in the business of marijuana and also for people to purchase marijuana because of its illegality. I don't know, does that make sense? Number 6. The 6th reason that I believe that marijuana should be legalized is that it would allow for a better quality weed to be purchased and more reliable quality weed run unregulated and you don't really know where it's coming from. Marijuana itself is super not dangerous. It's impossible to overdose on marijuana, and it's really hard to ever be like physically affected negatively by marijuana. But a lot of times marijuana can be sold either laced with something, or it could be sold a really poor quality of marijuana, so that marijuana might have more negative consequences to use than actual like high quality marijuana. Another thing is that when you're having regulated marijuana that is, legal marijuana, you know exactly how much marijuana that you're having, as opposed to marijuana that you might buy illegally. You don't really know if it's fully marijuana or what the concentration of the THC is. How high is that weed really going to get you? So that's why I think that marijuana, one reason why I think marijuana should be legalized, is so that you always know the exact quality and quantity of marijuana that you're consuming. Number 7. Número 7. Number 7. Número 7. Another reason that I believe marijuana should be legalized is that it would create more jobs for the economy. Obviously, unemployment is a huge issue in every country, including the United States, and it is very commonly one of the most important issues to voters in this country who are voting in elections. And by legalizing marijuana, you would create more jobs for people to work in the marijuana industry. These could be really high-paying, good jobs that are full-time jobs. And right now, obviously, there's a pandemic, a global pandemic that is hitting the United States really hard. And a lot of people have lost their jobs. Opening a completely different new industry like the marijuana industry could help bring some jobs to this country, get some people employed and back on their feet during the pandemic. So this is a huge reason, a huge economic reason why marijuana should be legalized. The last reason is reason number 8. And the last reason for legalizing marijuana, in my case, for the legalization of marijuana, is to close the racial gap in the United States of America. And I have a few statistics to read you. The first is black people are 3.64 times more likely than white people to be arrested for marijuana possession, notwithstanding comparable usage rates. In every single state, black people were more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession, and in some states, black people were up to 6, 8, or 10 times more likely to be arrested. In 31 states, racial disparities were actually larger in 2018 than they were in 2010. So that just means the racial disparity in how racist marijuana policies affect people have only become worse over the years, over the past 8 years. And according to a 2020 analysis by the Washington Post, between 2015 and 2019, there were 3,631 marijuana arrests in the District of Columbia. 89% of those arrests were black, even as they only make up 45% of the city's population. So, black people make up less than half of the Washington, D.C. population, but make up more than 89% of the marijuana arrests in the city. So, I think it is pretty undeniable that whether or not you think marijuana is a good or a bad thing, having it illegal is affecting black communities much worse than it is affecting other communities. And I think that reason alone should be convincing enough to legalize marijuana or to support the legalization of marijuana. Hopefully, I was able to convince a few of you who didn't already agree with me before watching this video. If you don't agree with me, feel free to tell me why in the comments. If you do agree with me, please feel free to tell me why in the comments. Before I end this video, I wanted to just go over a few things legalization of marijuana. So if we're going to be legalizing marijuana, which I think we should, it's important to be wary of over-regulating it so that poor people cannot be involved in the marijuana business. I think it would be a really big shame if we allowed big business to take over the marijuana industry and only allow people who are already rich to profit off of the sale of marijuana. So that would be my first warning, I guess. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that if we legalize marijuana in this country but don't expunge the records of people who already have marijuana charges, then that's just really messed up, and I think missing the point. We shouldn't only be legalizing marijuana, we should be legalizing it and paying reparations to those lives that we affected negatively or ruined because of racist and bad marijuana policies. The last thing actually just kind of goes along with the first, and it's that we shouldn't allow wealthy people to take control over the marijuana market. That would be a huge missed opportunity. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed doing a little bit of the research. I'll put some of the research I did or some of the sources I used in the description box. I honestly didn't use that many because I spoke from the heart here mostly and just from kind of what I believed, but there were some sources that I used for this information, so I definitely want to include it. I also want to say that you should seek more perspectives on this rather than just mine. There are a lot of perspectives out there, particularly from people of color, and those you should definitely prioritize listening to as well and learning about. So if you find any of those sources that are written by or rated by people of color, please feel free to put those in the comments too, and I'll take a look, and I definitely want to learn more as well. I will be back with a new video on Thursday because I now make videos Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. I'm really trying to grow this channel, so please give this video a like. Please subscribe and click the bell notification if you can, and then also give me a comment because I love reading them. I hope this was relaxing, and I hope you have a great night.